What up, all my fight fans? So, the UFC drama house continues with Jon Jones and Dana White. You know, we all know the backstory already. Jon Jones wanted to fight in the White House. Dana White saying he was never in any kind of negotiations with Jon Jones to fight at the White House. Jon Jones is coming out pretty much tweeting left to right, saying like how they were in negotiations. You got everybody and their mother talking about this. So let's talk about it, shall we? And the main topic of this conversation is, does Dana White release Jon Jones? Because Jon Jones basically has said, if you're not going to fight me, release me. So what does happen? Well, they are never going to release Jon Jones, because regardless of the fact that Jon Jones is and always will be a big superstar within the organization, he may be overpricing himself, I guess you could say. Like, you know, there was this talks of what really transpired with this whole conversation was Jon Jones asking for that $30 million to face Alex Pereira at the White House, or even possibly, I mean, hearing even more rumors of the fact that it might be $15 million to fight Alex Pereira at the White House, or something to that nature. Like, I believe it's a big money issue, because I've been hearing different stories. I've been hearing that he wanted $30 million. The UFC offered him $15 million, and he did not want to take it. And now it's just a bunch of back and forth. So now, what does the UFC do? Are they going to fight Jon Jones, or are they going to let him out of his contract? Well, first, let's get into the whole why of what's going on. Well, we all know Jon Jones had played hardball for a very long time regarding money. And this goes even back further to where he wanted Deontay Wilder money, Deontay Wilder being a world champion in boxing, to face Francis Ngannou. The UFC was not going to give him that at that time. This was back, I want to say 2020, maybe 2019, around that time frame. And, you know, I remember when Francis Ngannou won the championship, Dana White was all over it. Dana White was like, hell yeah, Jon Jones is never going to face him. And we remember that drama, that he was never going to face Francis, and that Francis was the king. Francis was the best heavyweight right now. And then Jon Jones returns, and Francis, of course, ends up doing his situation regarding money and regarding the whole thing. And then Jon Jones becomes pound for pound number one. He's the greatest ever, according to Dana White. And then you get a new rising star, up and comer, who's making a lot of noise in Tom Aspinall. Tom Aspinall deserves a shot at the championship. Jon Jones wins and defends the championship against Ciryl Gane and Stipe Miocic, and he said the only way he would ever face Tom Aspinall is if he gets stupid amount of money. Like, it is literally worth it if he gets that money. Well, the UFC wanted to give him that money, which was, I believe, $30 million. Jon Jones guess was bluffing and decided to retire, decided to vacate that belt. And now I believe that's where it all stems from. It has nothing really to do with this whole arthritis. It has nothing really to do that he looks slow and sluggish. I believe that Jon Jones really overpriced himself and really played hardball, because we all know and we remember when he went against Stipe, and he wanted, right after that, he wanted Alex Pereira because he felt it was more of a legacy fight. It really wasn't. It was more of a fight that it was going to be more in his favor, because Alex Pereira, yeah, is he a big name, big star? Sure. But at the same time, it was going to be a lot more easier of a fight for Jon Jones. But at the end of the day, they did not want to give him that. So they wanted to give him Tom Aspinall, because Tom Aspinall was the rightful contender. 100%, he was already the interim champion, but that did not transpire. That did not happen. Jon Jones vacated, decided to retire. Well, the UFC gets to the White House, and White House ends up being a big thing, of course, and continues to be a big thing. But Jon Jones now wants to face Alex Pereira because Tom Aspinall is hurt. Tom Aspinall was hurt. And that's another question we always got to, no one's really asking ourselves, like, would Jon Jones even be doing all this if Tom Aspinall was actually healthy? You know, that's something for a different video. But nonetheless, Jon Jones wanted the money that he asked for, and also wanted Alex Pereira. Sounds like Jon Jones was really trying to get what he originally asked for a couple years ago. And the UFC was not going to do that. UFC was not going to play that kind of game. They were like, no, you wanted $30 million to face Tom Aspinall. You played hardball. You did not take the fight. Instead, the fight went to Ciryl Gane, and this whole mess ended up happening. And we lost so many years with Tom Aspinall and so many title defenses with Tom Aspinall that now all of a sudden the stars lined up, and now you want your $30 million or $15 million to face Alex Pereira. Now, I know a lot of people are saying, there are people saying like, well, Conor Benn got 15 million and he's really a nobody. He's really not somebody that's really important or anything to that nature. But nonetheless, if you really think about it, sure, does Jon Jones deserve it? But I believe it's more of a principle thing. Like, no, you end up getting what you wanted. You end up getting all these other things. We did you that favor. We did you that favor of giving Stipe, because originally you're supposed to face Tom Aspinall. But because we promised Stipe, because Stipe was originally the opponent and we finally did it, you did us dirty. So now what? All of a sudden we're going to give you that? I'm talking for the UFC. UFC is going to give you Jon Jones this kind of leverage, this kind of like reward for making a mess of the UFC's heavyweight division? No, they weren't going to do that regardless of anything. Even if there wasn't a heavyweight contender to face, I don't believe Jon Jones was ever going to get any kind of title shot or any kind of money. Now, if he just wanted a title shot, if he just wanted the luxury of fighting at the White House, 100% Jon Jones is on that card. But because he wanted astronomical money, because of the whole situation with Conor Benn and the whole 15 million and how he gets that money, how he should give that money, this situation is happening regarding Jon Jones. And it's very, very sad, because I believe Jon Jones would have fought on the White House, would have gotten all that money that he wanted, the 30 million, he would have faced Tom Aspinall, a very good chance he could have beat him just due to the experience that he has, and he would have fought Alex Pereira, and he would have had all this money. So all this really stems from Jon Jones. Not really Dana White, not really the UFC. It was Jon Jones gambling, Jon Jones trying to think he was way bigger than the UFC, felt like he deserved so much from the UFC because he's done so much. I'm sorry, guys, that really pisses me off. That really irritates me, because he's like, oh, well, he gave me this. He gave us the UFC. He gave us so many fights. No, the UFC gave you a title shot. You won. You defended your belt multiple times. Why? Not because you wanted to, because it was your job. And what do you do, or what do you get when you do your job? You get paid. Now, no, they did not pay him as much as he deserved, but they didn't pay a lot of people they didn't deserve. So that's besides the point at this moment. I'm just hearing about what they deserve. Now, if they want to give him more money, okay, they could give him a little bit more money, and I believe he would have gotten it. They were going to give him more money. That 30 million against Tom Aspinall, they were going to give it to him. So let's not pretend that UFC was never going to pay him. But because they did him dirty, because they did all that stuff, that's why they're not going to pay him. They were originally going to pay him. It really has nothing to do with this Conor Benn or anything like that. The UFC was going to pay Jon Jones astronomical money, but he decided to not take the fight. That's on him. He would have had a contract, a higher paying contract right now, but he decided not to take the fight. So when he goes off and say, everything I've done for the UFC, you did your job. You were the champion of the world. Don't pretend as if you had to do this all because of the goodness of your heart. You were the heavyweight champion, the light heavyweight champion of the world, defended it multiple times because you want to fight for the UFC, because you want to be a fighter, because you are employed by the UFC. None of the things that Jon Jones did was the goodness of his heart. It was because he got paid. It was because it was his job to defend the belt in the light heavyweight division, and then it was his job to do so in the heavyweight division, just like it's everybody else's job. So don't tell me that it's all about, oh, what I've done. Yeah, you brought a lot of butts to the seats. You got paid. You brought a lot of pay-per-view buys and all this stuff. You got paid. You wanted more money? They were going to give you more money. You decided not to take the fight. So now he's not on the White House card. Now he's not facing Alex Pereira, and now he wants to be released. But is the UFC going to release him? Probably not. Because they know he could get paid. They know he could do a lot well. So now this right here, now whole discussion, why Jon Jones is not on the White House cause, we just discussed that. That we know why now. And a lot of it, probably 90% of it, is because of his doing. But as far as being released goes, well, Jon Jones being released, I won't mind it, honestly. I mean, because we all know he could go to MVP, and that's where Francis Ngannou is at now. Francis Ngannou signed with MVP. He has a fight on the undercard of the Ronda Rousey-Carano fight, and that they would get paid a great amount of money. But now, I believe the UFC will get Jon Jones to fight, because eventually he's going to have to fight out of his contract. He's going to have to fight basically eventually, and he could very well be released. And if he's injured as he says he's injured, if he's really hurting as much as he says he's hurting, then okay, I believe that the UFC is going to probably let him go and let him be somebody else's problem. Maybe he only has 1 or 2 fights left in him. It's like, all right, cool. You know what? Go make your money. Go do your thing. We are focusing on the future. You are somewhat of the past now because you have so much other issues. You have so much other health problems. Go do your thing. Then I believe they will let him go, because I believe the whole principle of everything was him facing Alex Pereira for a large amount of money at the White House. They were not going to give him that. I do believe they're still going to give him a fight. I do believe they're going to give him money, but it wasn't going to be on his terms. It's going to be on their terms. Yeah, does it sound petty? Yeah, does it sound a little immature? But at the end of the day, the person that started all this was Jon Jones. He was being very difficult. If he would have just took that fight, if he would have just took that money, none of this would be happening. He would be on that White House card and he would have got paid. But no, he's looking for easier competition because, again, he feels like he deserves it because he did so much for the UFC. So did everybody else, and nobody's asking for all these luxuries. You did so much for the UFC, and they reward you by giving you Stipe Miocic. There it is. You got it. Now move on to business as usual, but you didn't want to do that. Now, if they're going to release you, it's because you're continuing to be difficult. Then they're going to be like, you know what? I'm done. I'm just done, because right now the whole UFC organization is kind of a little bit crazy since they joined Paramount. Since they joined this whole organization there's not necessarily big super fights being talked about just due to the pay-per-views being gone now. With the pay-per-view model being gone now, they're not necessarily looking for pay-per-view buys. Really, they're looking for views, don't get me wrong, but at the same time, the UFC is already getting paid. I believe they're getting like $1.7 billion a year, regardless of how their viewership or their attendance goes. Now, I'm sure they still need the attendance, because Paramount didn't just buy a fixer-upper. They bought a really well-oiled machine in the UFC, but we'll talk about that at a different time. So nonetheless, guys, is Jon Jones gonna get released? I do not think so. 100% do not think so. Do I feel like it's a possibility? Yes, just due to the fact that there's so much drama and so much negotiations that need to be had and see what's happening money-wise. But there's still plenty of fights for Jon Jones. Jon Jones could still face Alex Pereira. Jon Jones could still face Tom Aspinall. There are still fights out there for Jon Jones. But Jon Jones has already said, and only said, he wants to fight at the White House. That's the only fight he wants to come back for. But he's not getting it. So is Jon Jones gonna want to fight in general? Who knows, guys? Where the story will continue, I'm sure we're gonna hear a lot more from it. Like, subscribe, hit that notification button, and I'll see you guys in the next video.